Good morning. The first item of business is general questions, and at question number 1 I call Ash Regan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it remains committed to rolling out universal entitlement to free school meals for all primary school children within the current parliamentary session.
Cabinet Secretary Jenny Gilruth.
The Scottish Government remains committed to the universal provision of free school meals in primary schools. The current financial position means that we are prioritising targeted support for those pupils most in need. In 2025-26, we are providing £37 million of resource to support the expansion of free school meals to pupils in primary 6 and 7 in receipt of the Scottish Child Payment. An agreement to the budget from parties across the Chamber will ensure that this work continues.
Ash Regan.
Universal free school meals have been a policy aspiration for this Parliament for many years now, supported by members across this chamber, the STUC and Action for Children. Child poverty is not unavoidable. It is, as we know, a political choice. And free school meals are essential to reduce pressure on often fragile household budgets and drive down the number of children going hungry at school. But the school day doesn't get any cheaper after primary school. So will the Scottish Government agree to complete their promised delivery of universal free school meals to all primary school children by the end of this Parliament, and then commence the rollout into high school by increasing eligibility to secondary school children in receipt of the Scottish Child Payment?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, this Government stands by the commitment to deliver free school meals to all primary school pupils, and having taught hungry children as a teacher, I know how transformative this policy has been for families across Scotland, with those who take up the offer saving roughly £400 per child per year. Right now, we are delivering universal free school meals during term time for all 2,703 children in primaries 1 to 5 and children in special schools, as well as eligible pupils in primary 6 to secondary S6. Out with the term time, we remain the only part of the UK to provide families with extra support through our Holiday Hunger programme, with £21.75 million being provided to support free school meals to eligible families during the school holidays in this academic year. The next step of the universal rollout is a targeted approach supporting those children most in need who are in receipt of the Scottish Child Payment in primaries 6 and 7.
Brief supplementary, Stuart McMillan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I can ask the Scottish Government what more it is doing to improve uptake of free school meals amongst children in receipt of the Scottish Child Payment, and what additional measures has the Government included in the budget for 25-26 to support with the costs of the school day for families?
Cabinet Secretary.
I mentioned in response to the previous member the extension of the free school meal rollout to those eligible in primary 6 and 7 in relation to those in receipt of the Scottish Child Payment. But the budget also prioritises further support for families. So, for example, we have committed to lifting the 2-child cap, uprating the school clothing grant, and also allocating £18.7 million to continue to deliver the Education Maintenance Allowance programme, providing vital financial support to young people from low-income households to enable them to remain and progress in their learning.
Number 2, Audrey Nicholl.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what impacts its recently announced hub for offshore wind will have on the renewable sector in the north east of Scotland.
Cabinet Secretary Gillian Martin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The offshore wind hub in north east Scotland will provide an additional route for industry to meaningfully engage with the Scottish Government. It will build on what we've already in place with our consenting teams as we fully unlock sector opportunities and jointly deliver on Scotland's offshore wind potential. This complements our announcement of almost tripling our capital funding in offshore wind to £150 million next year, part of our up to £500 million strategic investment over 5 years, expected to unlock £1.5 billion in private investment and support thousands of new jobs.
Audrey Nicholl.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response. Scotland's offshore energy industry has been a success story for over 50 years, and repurposing the North Sea as a global multi-agency basin will ensure the sector can power the country for decades to come. Recently, Aberdeen and Grampian Chamber of Commerce highlighted the benefits of locating Scottish Government agencies in the North East in order to accelerate planning and consenting processes for offshore wind and remove grid bottlenecks. So, with this in mind, can the Cabinet Secretary provide some further detail on how the proposed Scottish Government hub will work with stakeholders to realise Scotland's energy potential?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I thank Audrey Nicholl for that question. The offshore wind hub in Aberdeen will provide an opportunity for the Scottish Government and other parties across Scotland to work with the offshore wind industry. The development of the hub is at its initial stages, and my officials will be engaging further with industry as well as other stakeholders to understand what they would actually find helpful, as well to support the offshore wind sector, which played that critical role that Audrey Nicholl describes in Scotland's journey to net zero and a just transition.
Brief supplementary, Douglas Lumsden.
Thank you, President Officer. I welcome any pounds spent in the North East after this SNP government have treated the North East like a cash cow for far too long. So
Let us hear Mr Lumsden.
Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary what funding will be made in the future to the Net Zero Technology Centre after the City Region deal funding from both the UK and Scottish Government comes to an end in 2026? Because I'm sure the Cabinet Secretary would agree that this organisation is vital for growing the renewable sector in the North East.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, as we have done in the past, we are committed to fund the Net Zero Technology Centre because it does absolutely excellent work. But in terms of the words cash cow, I'm reflective very much of the fact that most of the funds from offshore oil and gas for the last 50 years have gone down to the Westminster Treasury, and Scotland, and indeed Aberdeen and the North East, have seen very little in return.
I call Mercedes Vialba.
Presiding Officer, the RMT has highlighted that over 200,000 jobs have already been lost across the offshore oil and gas industry in the last decade. I'm sure the Minister will agree that we need these offshore workers in the North East for our green energy transition. We need their experience, their knowledge and their skills. But does she agree that we cannot expect these workers to pay the cost of the transition? And if so, can she tell these workers how this new hub will remove the cost to them of retraining and skills passporting to the green transition?
Cabinet Secretary.
So Mercedes Vialba might have understood the purpose of the hub slightly incorrectly, because it is not going to be a training hub as such. Obviously, when we're working with industry partners who are actually industry-led skills passport, which is actually starting to come to fruition, I suggest that Mercedes Vialba catch up with OEUK and REUK, who are leading on this work, this vital work.
Question number 3, Claire Adamson.
To ask the Scottish Government what action it is taking, including in discussion with Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, to promote electrical safety over the Christmas period.
Minister Siobhan Brown.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Government works closely with the Scottish Fire Rescue Service, which has an annual fire safety campaign. This year, the focus is on devices powered by rechargeable lithium-ion batteries. Householders will be urged to buy, charge and dispose of these safely to prevent accidental fires at home. In addition, SFRS will issue public safety advice over the festive period, with a particular focus on kitchen safety, as most fires start in the kitchen more than any other room in the house. Raising awareness of the risks associated with lithium-ion batteries is particularly important, as products containing them are becoming more increasingly popular.
Claire Adamson.
Can I thank the Minister for that answer? The research from the Child Accident Prevention Trust shows that almost 3/4 of parents wrongly believe that any product aimed at children under 5 has to be fully tested and certified safe by an independent body before it can be sold online. But online marketplaces, as the Minister has highlighted, are littered with substandard fake goods. During the festive period, will the Minister join me in emphasising the need to stay vigilant, particularly if you're buying online, stick to trusted traders and make use of freely available resources produced by organisations like the Child Accident Prevention Trust and Electrical Safety First?
Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank Claire Adamson for highlighting this really important issue. I'm happy to emphasise the crucial role everyone has to play in their and their families' safety, and strongly urge people to only buy products from reputable retailers that they know and trust. It is vital that any electrical items are used, charged and stored carefully and safely. I urge anyone to be aware of the risks, and if you ever see smoke or flames coming from a battery or a device, If in doubt, never tackle it yourself. Get out, stay out and call 999. The Scottish Fire Rescue Service also hosts a range of fire safety information on their website that I would also recommend people to make use of.
Question number 4, Stuart McMillan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government when it last discussed transport infrastructure in Inverclyde with Transport Scotland.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
Transport Scotland is Scotland's national transport agency and is part of the Scottish Government. My Transport Scotland officials there are in regular contact with their colleagues in planning and regional economic development departments, including a wide range of topics, including transport infrastructure in Inverclyde. Recent discussions have included the preparation of Inverclyde Council's local development plan and the delivery of city-region deal projects. In the case of the local development plan, transport infrastructure is a critical enabler in the planning process to allow long-term sustainable growth.
Stuart McMillan.
I want to thank the Cabinet Secretary for her reply and I want to put on record my thanks to Amy for their investment in the trunk road network in my constituency over the last few years, particularly the resurfacing between Greenock and Port Glasgow on the A8 and also the A78. However, Amy have let themselves down in one aspect, and that comes to the relining of the roundabouts in Greenock and Port Glasgow. There's 3 roundabouts in particular where there are serious safety concerns because of the lack of relining. So can I ask the Cabinet Secretary to engage with Transport Scotland to ensure that that work is undertaken as quickly as possible?
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government recognises the importance of the A8 through Inverclyde. We confirm we will continue to invest to keep it well maintained and safe. Our operating company, Amy, has committed to renew the road markings at the roundabouts at the earliest opportunity, following the representation of Stuart McMillan as the constituency MSP. And in the meantime, weekly safety inspections will continue and any safety critical defects will be addressed quickly.
I call Jackie Bailey. Question number 5. I would remind all members that they should attend the question session from the beginning where they have a question in that session.
To ask the Scottish Government what its position is on whether Dumbarton Castle is an important cultural asset.
Cabinet Secretary Angus Robertson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and thank you to Jackie Bailey for her question. The Scottish Government recognises Dumbarton Castle's historical significance and its protection as a scheduled monument under the Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Areas Act 1979. We are proud that Historic Environment Scotland, our lead public body that investigates, cares for and promotes Scotland's historic environment, continues to look after the many important cultural assets in its care, like Dumbarton Castle, and this is why we've allocated more than £74 million in the budget for 2025-26 for the invaluable ongoing work undertaken by Historic Environment Scotland.
Jackie Bailey.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his response? But Dumbarton Castle doesn't receive even a tenth of the money going to Edinburgh Castle or Stirling Castle. Scaffolding has been up for years and the castle is sometimes closed for no apparent reason. Its collection is scattered to other castles across Scotland. Its importance in Scottish history is not in any doubt. Home to kings and queens, including James IV of Scotland and Mary Queen of Scots, the longest recorded history of any stronghold in Scotland. Yet there is not a single mention of Dumbarton Castle in the Historic Environment Scotland annual report for 23-24. So what will the Cabinet Secretary do to ensure that Dumbarton Castle is restored to its former glory? And I wonder, Presiding Officer, whether I could invite him to come on a visit.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, firstly, Jackie Bailey is correct to highlight the importance of Dumbarton Castle, and for those interested, I'd commend the excellent book Vanished Kingdoms by Norman Davis, who dedicates a whole chapter to the Kingdom of the Rock Al Clwyd. I'm happy to take up the invitation to visit. But given the importance of the invaluable work undertaken by Historic Environment Scotland in relation to Dumbarton Castle and literally hundreds of sites around the whole of the country, I hope that Jackie Bailey will vote for the budget early next year.
Question number 6, James Dornan.
To ask the Scottish Government how its draft budget 2025-26 will support the growth of the Scottish economy.
Cabinet Secretary Shona Robertson.
This budget puts money firmly behind the programme for Government's priorities for economic growth. This is a budget for the whole of Scotland, laying the foundations for the long-term prosperity of our people, places and businesses. That's why the budget prioritises supporting our economy to be more productive and competitive, creating the economic conditions that increase employment and earnings, lift people out of poverty and raise living standards. We're making major capital investments and leveraging in private investment into housing, transport, energy and digital connectivity to deliver a green and growing economy.
James Dornan.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. And obviously, increased investment in growing our green economy is a welcome and vital part of the draft budget, particularly in light of diminishing capital funding from the UK Government over recent years. Can the Cabinet Secretary say any more about what steps the Scottish Government is taking to generate private sector investment in Scotland's next net zero economy?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, Scotland is already one of the most attractive places in the UK for inward investment, and this budget builds on this even further to leverage in private investment to drive economic growth, and this includes £321 million for our enterprise agencies to support Scottish businesses, a further £200 million investment in Scottish National Investment Bank to invest in projects like Ardisia, which attracted £300 million in private investment, and of course investing £150 million in the offshore wind sector to deliver the supply chain and port infrastructure required to maximise the economic benefits that growth of the industry will bring to Scotland.
Thank you. Question at number 7, Lorna Slater.
To ask the Scottish Government, in light of the Circular Economy Scotland Act 2024, what progress has it made towards implementing mandatory food waste reporting by larger businesses?
Cabinet Secretary Gillian Martin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Following the unanimous support for the Circular Economy Scotland Act, we published the final Circular Economy and Waste Route Map yesterday, which sets out 11 priority actions to drive progress in more sustainable resource use and reducing waste. Actions include developing with stakeholders effective options to implement mandatory reporting for food waste and surplus by businesses from 2025-26. To do this, we will establish an expert advisory group to help develop proposals. Further consultation and engagement will be undertaken as part of the development of secondary legislation informed by best practice from existing voluntary reporting.
Lorna Slater.
I think I heard the Minister say nothing yet. Significant amounts of good food are wasted in Scotland despite a cost of living crisis where people are struggling to feed their children and the significant carbon impact of waste food. Many businesses in hospitality, retail and food production already follow best practice and report their waste and surplus via RAP, which allows them to save money through identification of wasteful processes as well as helping them on their journey to net zero. Delaying until next year to create a new advisory group to take 2 years to come up with ideas for something that industry is already doing isn't the urgency that is required. Is the Scottish Government doing what it so often does on climate matters, setting out bold intentions but failing to follow up with effective and timely action?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I don't accept that we're doing nothing. Ms Slater characterises the action that we're taking in a rather negative way, and given that she was so closely working on this before I got responsibility for it, she knows that we need to work with businesses in order to make sure that we're doing this in the right way. And she mentions the around 27% of food waste is created by businesses, and the RAP UK data indicates that hospitality outlets could save up to £10,000 per year per outlet by reducing food waste. It's that we've got to capitalise on, but we need to work with the industry to make sure that what we put in place is efficient and accepted by the industry, who've got so much to gain from these policies.
Thank you. Christine Graham.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. On food waste and the responsibility of large businesses, while Bog of buy one get one free has largely been consigned to the bin, buy one get one half price has not. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me? Much of this is thrown away and not edible. And in particular, would it not be better if businesses and supermarkets just simply brought down the price of single items, particularly for those who live alone, such as pensioners?
Cabinet Secretary.
Christine Graham makes a very good point, and I think she also makes the latter part of her question there indicates that maybe some of the packaged produce that's on our supermarket shelves is not suitable for those who live alone and may face a lot of food waste as a result. So I hope that supermarkets hear Christine Graham's points very loud and clear, and I'm happy to speak to Christine Graham about what more we can do in the Scottish Government to get the message out and to work with retailers in making sure that the supermarkets are actually providing for a range of customers and eliminating food waste at source.
Brian Whittle.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Presiding Officer, Christmas must be coming, because I find myself agreeing with Lorna Slater here. Because if food waste were a country, it would be the third biggest emitter of carbon after China and the United States of America. So I ask what the Scottish Government are doing to promote the changes we all can make to make sure that we reduce our food waste and therefore tackle climate change.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I think it's best to refer Brian Whittle to my initial answer to Lorna Slater, and we published the Circular Economy and Waste Route Map yesterday, and that we set out the 11 priority actions to drive progress. We are absolutely committed to reducing food waste down to the absolute minimum and eliminating and having a closed loop in terms of the amount of waste that we have more generally in Scotland. So hopefully in the further consultation and engagement undertaken as part of the development of this secondary legislation, Brian Whittle will work with me to make sure that businesses in his area are fully involved.